What we're going to do is be talking a little bit about advocacy and mental health supports in Canada and in different provinces, and basically what you can do, some basic advocacy that anybody can do to help make sure they're getting the best support that they need. So if you are looking for numbers, I will be providing some phone numbers and such if you're interested. Maybe we can post them later on the Discord uh, to just make it easier, but I'll read them out too. So if you have pens and papers, if you might be interested. I will be reading out some phone numbers for certain resources. Okay, let's get started. Did you want to start the missus?
Sure. I'll start off by saying that welcome to Beaver Politics. The Beaver Politics show, the Breaking the Dam, which focuses on mental health every Saturday at this time slot. We want to remind people that we have gift goals. If you look up in the top right hand corner, if you are so generous, then we appreciate the gifts. You can subscribe to the Beaver Politics channel. It gives you access to our Discord, as Jana was mentioning. And in Discord is where you carry on the conversations that are brought up in all of the shows here on Beaver Politics. And you get to bring information and you get to take information away. When you subscribe, you get all kinds of cool emojis, and that's kind of fun when you're doing the TikTok lives. And so we appreciate the support that Beaver Politics gets while you're enjoying, like Breaking the Dam, Jenna's show. So I just wanted to do the shameless plug for Beaver
Thank you.
Politics. And I'm looking forward to this advocacy conversation because, we're living right now with, I think, people coming sometimes experiencing what an existential threat could really,
Mm-hmm.
really be, right? And people are living in this fear level of like walking on eggshells, broken eggshells, just this, there's an underflow of tension. And so I think if you can know there are places out there that will advocate for you, that you can advocate for yourself, that you can advocate for loved ones, and that there's so many resources that we just people just not born with the information, right? So I'm glad that we get to do that for them. um Jana, just a little bit of feedback. When you're that low on the screen, it's hard to read the comments. Are you,
Okay.
just because of the color contrast
Let me
or
change it
lack
to
of it
white.
or
Does that work
something?
better or black?
I don't know.
Let me take a
I
look
don't know if
here.
you can raise yourself up higher on the screen.
Oops.
There you go.
There I
Or
can.
yeah, there we
Is that
go.
better?
Yeah, that's it. That is better because you see more brown and yeah, just
Good, good. Yeah,
I'm so happy.
no, it can be really hard to see a screen. Apparently my speaker's still echoing. I've moved it about as far as I can. So hopefully I let Desiree know I moved it. So hopefully it's not too echoey. We will
Still an
find out.
echo. Your speakers
And
are too close to the mic.
yeah, I
Oh,
moved it
okay.
again. Yeah.
Maybe
So
it's
it's like 6 feet away from me now. So if it's still echoing, I'm kind of out of trouble. In trouble, I think,
you
because
know.
my computer speaker is not the best. I could
You
put on my
sure it's you
headset
and
though.
not me, eh?
Yeah, is it still bothering you, Desiree? Is it still happening? Or anybody?
I don't know.
Yeah, let me know if it is. And yeah, I
I
did
I
turn my
hear
speaker. I
that.
turned it backwards. I moved it 6 feet away. If it's still doing it, I'm going to resort to my headset.
Okay.
So just give me a second to do that. Turn this off. Sorry about that. Just if it's echoing the whole time, it's just going to be distracting. Okay, settings. So sorry about this. There's always technical difficulties. But if you want to start speaking, you can go ahead, the missus, and I'll be done this hopefully in a second. It shouldn't take long to set this up to my Bluetooth system. Home, Bluetooth. Mhm. One more thing. There we
Can you
go.
hear me?
I'm connected and I can hear you. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
I was just wondering if because I was talking, I didn't think anybody could hear me. So, is it still echoing in the comment section? Perry or somebody is saying it's me who's echoing. So I
Oh, all good.
disconnected. Yeah, I disconnected my mic and put my own, like I have a mic thing.
Whatever we
So,
did, it's working.
all right, thank you.
Okay.
Where was
So,
I?
okay.
Yeah,
Do you want me to start or do you want to start?
you go ahead and start.
Okay.
I just, did the
I'm just
shameless
gonna.
plug, and I'm
Okay. Well, I
already.
think we forgot the tapping is clapping. So
Yeah,
make
you're
sure
already
to.
over 2,000. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, that is awesome. If I'm already to over 2,000, so
Yeah.
please keep clapping. I really appreciate it. It helps not just boost my ego, but more importantly, it gets the show out to other people who may not see it otherwise. Because the more engagement it gets, the more likely it is to show up on people's feeds. So really appreciate you doing that. Oh, and thank you, Lori, for the gift. Really appreciate it. Slight echo, but much better. Thank you, Empress. So what we're going to talk about first is how it can be a challenge to get the mental health help that you need in Canada in general and depending on your province. There are a lot of barriers and a lot of challenges, and I'm sure many people have experienced that where it's hard to get help or how to know where to look for help. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about where to start when you're going on your mental health journey, and if you've had challenges, ways that you can work around it, some self advocacy, as well as some advocacy referrals that we can give to just kind of help you out if you're having that challenge. So I wanted to start with 211. I don't know how many of you know about 211, but it is available in all provinces except Nunavut. Nunavut. It was available there for a period of time, but unfortunately, they didn't get enough calls to keep the service, to be able to afford the service. It wasn't paying itself off, so to speak, in engagement. To be honest, 211s are nonprofit, so there's not a lot of advertising um, for them. But 211 is a simple 3-digit number, and what it does is it connects you to community information and referral specialists that are specially trained to answer these kinds of calls. They can give referrals for pretty much any community nonprofit service, as well as government resources and health services. So it's a 24-hour a day line, 7 days a week. You can also chat with many of them. This varies by province, but if you just type 21 or help in your cell phone and enter in Alberta, it'll get you through to 211 as well. But you can look at their website, or like I said, it's a free 3-digit number you can call 24 hours a day. A lot of people don't realize that. They do not close for anything, except emergencies like floods. That happens. But so that's a good place to start. If you aren't familiar with it, it can be really useful for a lot of things. Even if you don't know if something, that's actually when it's most useful, is when you don't know if something exists. Because a lot of times we're like, well, I feel this way, but I don't think there's anything that can help me. And the fact is that there may be, right? It's just a matter of unfortunately navigating the system. And that can be, system navigation can be very confusing and complicated. So this is something, the Mrs. has a great show on Thursdays where she talks a lot about advocacy and navigating the system. So that's why she's with me here today as well. Also wanted to bring up a few important numbers to have. One is the suicide hotline. If you're having thoughts of suicide and are not ready to reach out to 911, 988 is the number to call or text. And that will get you with a trained suicide prevention expert who will help have a conversation with you about what's going on for you, uh, de-escalate sometimes, and offer assistance in many different ways, including reaching out to emergency services for you if you are interested. And of course, yes, educational purposes only. We're doing this just to educate today. There's also Kids Help Phone. They used to be only for children, but they have expanded their reach to 25 years old or frankly any age. They will help you out. What's interesting about the Kids Help Phone is that it's all across Canada and they are answered by counselors. So these are actually people trained as counselors, not volunteers. Not that there's anything wrong with volunteers. They are wonderful, but sometimes, especially if you're dealing with young children, a trained counselor can be that much more effective just because they've got such a wealth of knowledge. So Kids Help Phone is 1-800-668-6868. Their website is just www.kidshelpphone.ca. They've got a lot of great resources there. Now, if you're also searching for resources, your Canadian Mental Health Associations, both the Canada-wide and provincial, is a really good site. They have some amazing programs. It's just www.cmha.ca for all of Canada, and there they have a tool where you can find your provincial websites. And through them, they have many different resources. It depends on the CMHAs vary quite a bit. Like I know the one in Alberta is looking at offering low cost counseling again or sliding scale counseling. So it's worth looking into your CMHA to see what they offer. They often have a lot of online resources for mental health topics. So these are like little webinars that you can go through on your own time, free of charge. They've got them on loneliness, feeling angry, grieving, mental health, general mental health awareness, mindfulness, PTSD, social support, stress, talking to teens about mental health, work-life balance, and youth and self-injury. So a lot of different topics there that you can do free online modules to just get a little bit of information. Youth and self-injury is one that can be hard to find, and that's unfortunately a lot of self-injury is very common among youth today, and it is different than suicide. Self-injury is about expressing the anxiety, stress, anger, frustration, feelings that they have of being trapped. And there is kind of an emotional release when you put a pain to it, a physical pain. And it can be a really hard thing to deal with and work with, but just know that there are resources out there for that if you have a youth or someone in your life that is self-harming. It's become much more common, and it's even common among young men. It used to be more young women, but not so much anymore. It's pretty much gone across the board.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to talk about recovery ecology, which is also through CMHAs. They have them in many of the different provinces, and they are, again, mental health courses. They took it from the United Kingdom. It was a very successful program in the UK. And they are focused on personal recovery and mental health and well-being, provide innovative learning spaces, both free courses, webinars, workshops, and events to learn and gain new skills and help connect with people in the community. Because a lot of times with mental health, especially after COVID, our connections have really frayed. Like we lost connections with a lot of people during COVID, and a lot of people lost friends and family connections, and just that sense of isolation. So that some they can work with that. They welcome people both in person training courses and virtual, so whatever your comfort level is. Or your distance. If you're out in the boonies somewhere, you can do it as long as you got internet access. So that's awesome. I don't know what that was, but that was funny. Let's see here. What else? They're modeled after a traditional college. They have a large course offering and vibrant learning environments. Everybody is welcome. Um, they talk about basically mental health, literacy, health, and well-being topics. So all really good things. They're available in Alberta, BC, Manitoba, Nova Scotia, Ontario, PEI, and Saskatchewan. So a lot of different resources out there. Another good one is Peer Support Canada, which is just www.peersupportcanada.ca. That's also available through CMHA, so it's connected to. And they have a chat. And also, they basically connect you to someone who is a peer who has gone through their own mental health struggles, who can be there as a support person for you, much like an AA person has a sponsor. So it's just someone you can reach out to when you're having tough times. And if you want to just have someone to be connected to who's maybe had similar experiences to you, it's a really great opportunity. There's also the Center for Addictions and Mental Health, which is offers free online mental health courses, such as youth and mental health, addiction, depression, and mental health general courses. And I also want to point out mygrief.ca. Also can be kidsgrief.ca or youthgrief.ca. And all three of those have online resources for people going through grief. And grief is a big one. A lot of people lost friends, family members, and you can grieve even if somebody hasn't died. You can grieve the loss of a friend. You can grieve the loss of an employer or a job. There's many different aspects to grief. So a lot of people just connect grief to death, and absolutely. But even if you have someone in your life that you've lost in a different way, a divorce even, there's grieving there. So just something to bring up. And just wanted to highlight three things for First Nations in particular. One is the Hope for Wellness Helpline. I'm going to give you the number, 1-855-242-3310, 24 hours a day. And it's First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people seeking emotional support, crisis intervention, or referrals to community-based programs. It's very specific to Indigenous, and they offer language English, French, and by request Cree, Ojibwe, and Inuktitut. Hopefully I pronounced that right. And of course, there is also the National Indian Residential Schools Crisis Line. This is for anybody who experienced or had a family member who experienced residential schools 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 1-866-925-4419. And important to end off with, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Crisis Line. That is a support available to any individual that's been impacted by this issue in any way. And you would just call 7 days a week, again, 24 hours a day, 1-844-413-6649. And we're going to put this up just in the Discord if anybody is looking for these numbers afterwards and didn't have a chance to write them down or just wants to have a look at the page. So with that said, those are just some. I also wanted to mention that many communities have free or low-cost counseling online. So there are options. I'm not going to lie, it's usually with students, but they're students that are highly supervised, and it's still better than not reaching out at all. You can still get a lot of impact from a mental health counselor. The one that I'm going to bring up right now is just the Free Counseling Society of Canada. They have very good hours and different appointments, and you can find them under www.freecounselingcanada.ca, or you can call them at 647-490-2992. They do not have a toll-free number, but you can reach them off of their website. So just some ideas for you guys in ways that you can reach out for mental health resources in general in the community. The missus, did you want to add anything?
My conversation, what I wanted to kind of premise our whole, like,
Mm-hmm.
a great deal of why I'm interested in this whole conversation about the advocacy is, and forgive me for those who listened to a little bit of this earlier, but that whole existential threat that we're living under and that undercurrent of fear that is making people for the first time perhaps reach out and try to, get themselves some support like this, never seeing themselves in the situation where they felt destabilized,
Yeah,
right? And so the barrage of mental health supports that are there, like how do you find the one that's appropriate for you? And I like the first piece of information that you offered around the 211, because it's
it's
your one
great.
stop shop to kind of send you in the right direction. But here, I'm breaking the dam, the beaver politics, connecting that political piece to people's personal lives for the first
Yep.
time. Some people are getting the fact that politics can destabilize your personal life at this level.
It
And I
can.
think it's important for rooms like this to offer a safe space for people to express that fear and
Yep.
for we don't want to feed a fear. That's
Mm-hmm.
why we're bringing resources here today, right?
Exactly.
we
There,
want
there
we
are
want
places.
people to know there's a step to take. And that's why I want to be a part of the conversation this morning. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I have been involved with using mental health services off the side of my desk as a social worker,
Yep.
and became part of that mental health service delivery myself
Yep.
in my work. And then one of the tools that I want to bring into this conversation is a tool called mental health first aid certification that anybody can take. You don't have to be a professional. You may just have a personal interest in your life. It is a first aid certificate in the same way that you go to get a first aid certificate to do CPR, to learn how to bandage, to have those basic core skills and how to be looking after somebody, how to be that caretaker.
Yep.
So that's what I found this old certificate of mine. I don't know how that works in the green screen here, but you know it's an actual certificate. It's a 3-day program,
Yep.
and I know that it can be shortened into 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, and you learn different you go into just different intense levels of understanding different types of mental health, from schizophrenia to bipolar to borderline personality disorder. You're taught
Mm-hmm.
all of the types of mental health diagnoses that maybe you work with, that maybe you have it in your personal life. And they actually, there's a number of places across Canada that are offering the training. And I know that here in British Columbia, we have Canada Mental Health offers this through their northern branch. The Métis Nation of British Columbia offers it. The Canada Mental Health through Vancouver Fraser, and then there's a place where you can go and search across Canada to see who's offering the training. They have specific training for youth. They have specific training for first Indigenous issues. So getting this first aid certification is about it is a really great foundational piece to begin with, because it's so doable.
Mm-hmm.
It's so doable. It is not like you have to go there and be tested and examined, and there's a big stressful situation happening around the learning. This is just sitting in workshops and enjoying how the information is presented, and then being able to discuss that with, like, other people in the room who are always there for a variety of reasons. It's always an interesting training kind of workshop to participate in. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure what the prices are. It was free when I took it. But what a privilege to get 3 days of training without a cost back.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the resource that I wanted to focus on, because it's nationwide.
And it's a
And
great one. I've done it as well, and I did the 1 day intensive, I believe. It was like a full seven hour day, and it was definitely worth it. Definitely worth all of the, like, a lot of it I already knew, but the pieces, even just the little pieces that I didn't, it was just great to like put it all together. And you learn a lot about how to recognize when someone is in a mental health crisis, and how, depending on the crisis, how to de-escalate and direct towards assistance is really at the end of the day what it's about. And it
it,
and
it
it
really is. It really is. It's about learning to diffuse situations, learning to, um, you know, uh, when to bring the support systems in. Like in
yeah,
our community, we had Car 60. So when we could phone Car 60's RCMP officer with a mental health nurse from
yeah,
the health, that did that work. And so, or when ambulance was needed, or when it was just a de-escalation, and you could manage, and that's how things manage 99% of the time, right? So if it, and learning that and becoming comfortable de-escalating your own internal fears or hesitations, this really
mm-hmm.
gets you comfortable with the whole conversation.
Yeah.
um,
And I wanted to just kind of mention, because of the current political environment, mental health is being stigmatized again, and
mhm.
which really is, on so many, like, it's so many things to me. Disappointing is the you know, but in a huge way. Like, it's I'm so frustrated and disappointed by what's going on in the States, and what comes out of, honestly, PP's mouth when it comes to mental health and calling it weakness. Um, and what's going on in the States is just much more disturbing. Like, the type of language that's being used around mental health, like left wing lunatics, for example, is
Yeah.
a phrase that both Trump and PP have used.
Yeah,
And and
that's
that
ableist, right? That's the ableist
very,
language. They normalize and they actually dehumanize people within the disability community, and that's
yeah,
how they do. That's how they do it. They normalize through ableist language. It's a very softball way of infiltrating society with your messaging. That's for
yeah.
sure, and it tickles
There's
the ears of a lot of people who like to hate, right? Really
mm-hmm.
tickles the ears.
But they want to hear that because, first of all, they've been told to hate us, that we're, going to do damage and things like that. But calling it left wing lunacy, left wing lunatics, um, Trump talking about people. coming out of asylums, when he was talking about some of the people from Mexico crossing the border and talking about them like they're violent, dangerous mental health patients. And all
Right.
of that just adds stigma to mental health. Very, very few, like, I've done my own research on this. You are not more likely to be violent because you have mental health conditions. Any
That's
mental health condition. It
right.
just, does not even stand, even with schizophrenia, which is the one that people tend to fear the most. Someone with
Right.
schizophrenia is not any more likely to hurt anybody than someone without. It's, can schizophrenia get violent? Yes. Is it common? No, it's not. Like, and it's possible for people with anger management issues to get violent, and et cetera, et cetera. So having a mental health condition does not make anybody more susceptible to harming others, more susceptible to suicide, unfortunately. Actually, I don't know if I can use that word, unaliving themselves.
Self
But
harm, right? Self harm
yeah,
of all
self-harm.
sorts.
But they're in no way more likely to hurt anybody else. But the stories where it happens get in the news and you become, really scary stories. But it's just something to remember, that it's nothing. Having a mental health condition is nothing to be embarrassed about, and you need. It's like having a heart condition or diabetes. You need to take care of yourself in order to
And
be in a good
within
place.
our political systems, um, they have reduced the resources for people who could possibly fall into that category or who need more intense supervision. They have reduced the resources to the point where people are living in fear now. And
Yeah,
those kind of, the sensationalized stories you can trace back to failures within the systems. Right. And I know from being part of, in the late 2000s here in British Columbia, where they deinstitutionalized, which I believe in, but
yeah,
they,
me too.
for community living, but for people who needed intense psychiatric supervision, they closed down all those institutions. There
Yeah,
was no place to
no
take,
place to be.
uh, and they dispersed them within communities
Hmm.
and created situations that would set the person up to fail
Just like
first
releasing
and
prisoners, the same
foremost.
thing. They don't set people up for success.
And it frightens the community when they don't have when they have no way to respond to
Exactly. And
the
some
behavior.
people do need that institutionalization. Not as many people as ever were. Like, there were many more people institutionalized than need to be. But some people do need that support, that level of support. Just like
Yes,
someone, who has heart disease might need surgery at some point. Like, it's a level of support that's necessary at some points in people's lives. And
you
you should
know,
never be embarrassed about it. But they need that, and cutting to the mental health is just hurting everybody. It
absolutely. There's a lot of what, boots on the ground work being done on an
Yeah,
advocacy level by communities who see the gap in their service delivery. In my
yeah.
community, for instance, there's a nonprofit society that opened up to offer a drop in center. It's called ACE Drop In Center. They actually provide really cheap meals.
Yeah.
You can go down there and you can get, like, I think you can get meal twice a day down there. And they have pool table and they have a place for music and they have you know it's set up for looks kind of a typical drop-in center, but that is all driven by the local community. They went out and they did that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's all sorts of resources like that. I think that when you start doing a deeper dive outside of the government resources, look into the nonprofit sector, look into the people, agencies that are doing this sort of, like, they'll do special events around this, right? And
Yeah.
they'll do, I don't know, maybe they get together and they do a community garden,
Mm-hmm.
because they have a support group going for a mental health group at the Friendship Center. Like
Which
things
is
like
great.
that
Yeah,
are,
and I should mention those kinds of supports. Like, a lot of people, when they think mental health, they think strictly mental health, but things like getting involved in a community kitchen or a community garden are ways to meet people and expand your support system, right? And ways to at least help with the loneliness aspect. If you're feeling alone, you never even have to talk about your mental health, but you're getting in with, different groups of people and learning new things, and having that time to decompress in a different way. So hobbies are great. And there are a lot of senior centers. For example, if you're in the 55 plus, you're considered a senior for most senior center purposes. A lot of like crafting programs and all kinds of that. So sometimes get fitness, looking into fitness programs that are within your affordability or free. But I definitely love community kitchens because I've never ever no one's ever heard of a community or collective kitchen. It's just a
Mhm.
place where people can get together in a community center and cook large meals like based on and usually food bank donates money to them. It's lower cost. You pay $2 or $3 a person depending. It might be higher now. It's been a while since I've looked at them. But you pay per person that you're feeding, and you bring all of your containers with you, and you cook in bulk with a bunch of other people cooking, and you make like lasagnas and spaghetti sauces and soups and things that you can put in your freezer and you can feed your family for the week. So they're really great for stuff on the, like if you don't know how to cook, it's a great way to learn how to cook. If that's a barrier, if money is a problem for you and you're having food crisis, it's a great way to get some lower cost meals. And if neither of those two apply, it's a great chance to be social with people.
Depending on your community, of course, but in my
Yeah,
community, we have a university and we have college, and those are great resources for youth. And they have programs like a great recycling,
yeah,
almost like I think it's a nonprofit society now, but they recycle and they do composting and stuff like that. And they have a big garden up at the university, and everybody can go out. And so it's youth actually participating, volunteering their hours, getting out and doing these things that give back to community. They sell their product that they harvest.
yeah,
They sell. They have a big sale every year where you get seedlings, like when you're
yeah,
starting. What do you call that? Um, anyway, they have a big event, and so they do the recycling, or you can get involved. They have radio channels. Our
yeah,
community has a local radio channel. A lot of people don't know that they could probably go on and have their own conversations in
yeah,
spaces that are different than, like, say, TikTok world, like we're doing here. The university offered a radio line, and our local community has a local community line too. It's another great way to find out where your resources are. But the universities and colleges are a great place to find that advocacy and mental health supports for youth. Never mind that they
exactly.
have counseling departments, right?
Well, exactly. So, another thing you brought up volunteering. If you're not ready to be working but want some social interaction, volunteering is a fantastic way. You're not only helping yourself, you're helping your community, and you get to meet new people and try new things. It's a great, like, if you want to spread your wings and try something different. I've done quite a few. I've volunteered on a distress line. I've volunteered at the food bank, and I mean, it's always great experiences. So there are a lot of different options for volunteering in the community, even if you're under from 16 and up. And if you're looking for how to get connected, call 211 and they can direct you to how to find volunteer opportunities as well. It's among the things that they do.
We
So,
have
yeah,
in Prince George here we have like a local volunteer nonprofit society, and they published a resource book. We called it our Bible. We had
yeah,
every single office worker had one of these Bibles because it
yeah,
was the resource back in the day. And
mm-hmm,
they you go register to be a volunteer, and they'll place you somewhere.
yeah,
As a social worker, my course demanded that I do 40 hours of volunteering in the social work world before I could even enter into the course, before I could even enter in, because lived experience is important, right? And you start to be able to walk the talk if you've actually allowed yourself to have those experiences. And I always appreciated that about the way the course was designed for learning that way.
yeah.
And you're volunteering when you just mentioned, there's such a variety. I
You can
know,
do almost anything.
yeah, like I wanted to do skill development, so I volunteered at a women's center, and I volunteered to do minutes at board meetings and stuff like that, so I
Yeah,
could hone some administration skills.
yeah.
But I've always wanted to go volunteer at the where they have a big equestrian uh,
Mm,
uh,
the horse therapy.
world here in Prince George, right? And the John Howard Society did mental health therapy with horses, and
Nice.
the men would go and they would look after and take care of the horses and get to ride the horses, and it was an awesome mental health support project, right? So you can, like, the variety of skill development and interests that you can do, um, which supports your own mental health, right? And if you have somebody that you're concerned with, bring them along, right?
Yep.
Maybe by you doing something, they can engage in another level of mental health for themselves if you're
Yeah.
not, the concern.
It's so broad, and like, do you, are you like, a lot of them that they have things that you can ask. They ask questions to get an idea of what it is you like to do. You can work with animals, you can work with children, you can work with families, you can work with youth, seniors, with nobody. If you don't want to see anybody, you can work in a kitchen and make sandwiches. I mean, like, other than if you don't want to have one-on-one uh, interactions. Like, they're always looking for volunteers in all kinds of ways. If you play an instrument or have a dog that's really calm, you can be a visitor, a friendly visitor in a lot of seniors' homes. Um, like,
Well,
there's just so many.
that's an amazing experience to
Yeah,
go and
so many
volunteer that
options.
way.
Yeah,
You
bring your.
really, you really are opening your heart. You open
Mm-hmm.
your heart for those kinds of experiences. But what I think is important about centering the conversation of advocacy is that you get preparedness. You get preparedness in that you know the resources, but you also, you're doing your own personal learning, so you can see a crisis before it actually is upon you,
Yeah,
right? You can
be ready.
start, learning these things and applying them to yourself. And I think that is, you know that's the whole first aid certificate kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing, is that preparedness. But there's so many layers to it. There's
Well,
just so
and
many layers.
it's good,
Yeah.
especially if you struggle with your mental health, to have like a mental health safety package or plan, right,
Hmm.
in place. Like, what do you do if? Where do you reach out to first? What are your supports that you might try? Do you have the number for a distress line written down? Uh, the things like that. Like, having, if you have mental health challenges, having a number for your local distress line is a great place to start, because you may not feel like you're ready to reach out to 911, but you really need to talk to someone. And most of these distress lines run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 988 is the suicide distress line, but maybe you're having a schizophrenic episode. Like, what do you do when that
Can I
happens?
ask you a Can I ask
Mm-hmm.
you a question? Because I
Absolutely.
know you've had a lot of experience within, the mental health world in terms of career and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to. I mean, that's bringing a new piece of conversation here, but medication.
Mm-hmm.
Medication is something that,
Can be
as
divisive.
a feminist and somebody who has explored, um, gender oppression in our medical systems.
Yep.
The little pink pills, pushing pills on women because they have
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, or, but and instead of addressing the fact that there's, the
Problems.
environment is causing true anxiety, and maybe that problem needs to be fixed differently, they're offering them, and women being over medicated, and that's shifting
Mm-hmm.
socially over time. But do you have any, I just want to pick your brain about, people, how do they explore whether a
Mm-hmm.
medication is, for them, or
Yep.
how would they know if it's something's being pushed on them, as opposed to, like my doctor, I've only met him for 10 minutes and he's trying to give me this antidepressant pill, right? Like,
Yeah.
or is the doctor's known me for 5 years and is suggesting this? Which
Yep.
pill should I take when my guy's a GP and not a psychiatrist?
It's a tough one. And that's a great question. And a tough one to answer, but I'll do my best.
Okay.
The first thought that comes to mind is medication is very valuable, but there's always a but. On its own, it really doesn't work, in my opinion, as its only intervention. So when
Mhm.
considering medication, it shouldn't be, here's your pill, go take this for 6 weeks and come back and check in after that, because it should be effective by then. Because it takes about 6 weeks for an SSRI, it can be longer even, to actually get to doing work on the brain. With that said, I can't really say what medication would be best. Most of the time, if it's for depression or anxiety, it's going to be an SSRI first, which is
That's all right.
a selective serotonin uptake inhibitor. So basically, it works in your brain to basically so your brain can absorb more serotonin at the end of the day, because serotonin deficiency is very common in people with depression and anxiety. So that is that's why that's often a first line of defense for anxiety or depression. There were other medications historically given for anxiety, but they're terrible because they're addictive and they make you loopy, right? They make you like I can't think of the name, and I don't want to mention any specific names because it might get flagged anyway. But in the past, like my mom, I will tell you that she's passed away. She struggled with her mental health her whole life, as did her mother. I often joke and say the force is in my family. We have a lot of history of mental health, and she was put on one of those loopy drugs in the 70s, like after she had me and my brother, and she basically just zoned out. So she would never take another, like after she got herself off of it, because she was addicted to it, it took a while. Um, she, oh, thank you, Empress. Apparently, I'm doing a decent job. I'm trying to keep it in layman's terms. But this particular the little pink pills, as they were back in the day, everybody was popping them, and she got very addicted to them. And when she finally got herself off, she absolutely refused to ever take a pill again. And that was actually to her detriment, because I think some of the SSRIs, along with lifestyle changes, would have really helped her when they became available. But she only started taking one after she got diagnosed with lung cancer. That's what killed her, unfortunately. And honestly, the it did. She went on an SSRI at that point in time, and it really did improve her mood. Like it really did help her through that last year of her life. But is that always the answer? No. Is it over? Are people given pills too quickly? Probably. What I think first, I would look at working with a counselor or a psychologist and see where I can get there. And like I said, I know that cost can be a real barrier for a lot of people. Depending on your mental health system in your province, like in the province of Alberta, for example, if you go through your community clinics, there are ways to get counselors for free. It takes longer, but it is an option. There's also some, if you call your local 211, there are a lot of counselors that work sliding scale, which means it based on your income. So that if you make very little money, they might only charge you like even as low as $5. I've found people. A lot of them won't charge nothing because there has to be a value associated with it, or people don't take it as seriously, if that makes sense. When you have to pay for something, you put more value into it. So that $5 for someone who maybe is on ACE or income support is a lot of money for them, right? But it's still within affordability for them. So that's why they often charge. Some places will do it for free, but there are some that will work sliding scale. So I would probably start with counseling, and I would start with doing some research on what you've been diagnosed with. And mental health first aid is one way to do that, but just research online. Just make sure you're looking at good sites like good psychology sites. I would start with maybe Canadian Mental Health Association, because I know you can trust them, and they do list some different diagnoses and what that looks like for you. And then you can look into some courses that you can take through things like I'm just going to talk about Edmonton because I know resources in Edmonton, but I'm hoping that there are resources like that out there in different provinces. And here we have somewhere called Momentum Counseling, and they have free online courses for people in all kinds of uh, different types of mental health. Like they've got one for schizophrenia, I believe. They've got a course for bipolar, borderline personality disorder, and they're basically support groups, but they're also educational groups, and that can be something really good to get connected at. And they're free of charge, and there are a lot of those around. Just make sure you're I would call 211 to ask about that, to ask for support groups in my area, is what I would do if that were me. So I would get connected on building the other aspects of our life, because our mental health is affected by everything. If politics is the reason you're in a bad place, maybe you need to look at what you can do. Maybe it means you need to step away for a few days a week, or maybe means you need to cut your online time down a little bit. Or maybe, like one of the reasons I started posting was for my mental health, because I found it so frustrating not having a voice. So this is what I do to have a voice. But it's going to be different for everybody, right? Just because that's what helps me doesn't mean that's what's going to help somebody else. So it's really
No, I
important.
think the message is a lot of people is just to kind of drop the message about it's a two-part piece. If you're seeking medication, make sure this other piece is happening alongside it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you said, the medication is just like it's just like it's like when you break your leg, you're going to need a cast and you're going to need
Yeah.
a cane. and you may need some painkillers.
You may need physical therapy afterwards. Like there's
Right.
various
And so
aspects.
all of those things combined makes the dream work. The team works the dream work, right? That's what causes the healing that's more holistic.
Yeah.
And sometimes, people are not, stopping just to have that thought. And I hope
Yep.
that we can impart that here today. In
Yeah.
my, in the health authority in Northern British Columbia here, they have, and online they will mail it to you. You can get it mailed and or
Yep.
you can do it online, and it is a series of, it's just like doing a little workbook where you
Yep.
go through a series of cognitive behavior kind of,
Yep. And I'm a
um
big fan of CBT therapy.
yeah, and
It
I
worked
mean
for
that
me.
controversies and stuff, but the but there is some supports out there if you don't want to, if you're having a hard time,
Hmm.
have the services in your rural remote area, right? So you can have things mailed to you. You can, there's there your health authority is a good place to look, is what I'm saying, for
Hmm.
some of the, some resources that can be, for the rural remote areas. But
Yeah.
always please, as you look at the whole journey, needs to be holistic in its approach.
Yeah.
The indigenous,
Exactly. Think of
you
indigenous
know,
culture and their
yeah,
wheel,
the wheel,
medicine wheel.
yeah, all the medicine wheel and the four quadrants, and they've just always had it right.
Yep.
They just
You got to
always
look
had it.
after your whole self. If you just take a pill, it's just like having heart disease and taking baby aspirin. Is it going to help you? Yes. Is that the only thing you should be doing? Probably not. Like it's the same thing. Like it's not. I'm not anti-medication. I take meds myself. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and I do very well most of the time. But I medication and a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, counseling for the emotional aspect of it on top of the CBT, because CBT is not counseling. CBT is different. It is a method of understanding your
That's
fears and working uh, at your reactions to your fears. I'm
correct.
not going to get into like a big long detailed, but
That's
it's a
the,
different thing.
yeah.
General counseling is, and I'm a person that feels that general counseling, everybody should be getting general counseling at some points in their life. It can
Hmm.
be really helpful, and it really helps just talking about someone neutral who isn't a friend or family member, who you can be completely open with. And I will mention too that almost all counselors have counselors. Almost all psychologists have psychologists and counselors. It's really important to be able to have someone to debrief with when you're in those kinds of positions as well for your own mental health, because burnout is a real thing. So I just think it's really important to look at a holistic approach. Also, your physical health. If you can have vitamin deficiencies, maybe you don't exercise enough. Serotonin exercise is great for releasing endorphins in your body
Well, and if you're
in a
somebody with
natural way.
mobility issues, you don't have the ability maybe to
Hmm.
generate that on your own, and so
Exactly. So that might be a missing piece, but all the
yeah.
pieces you can get in. And there is something such as like chair yoga, even. Like, even if you have limited mobility, there may be ways you can still do something.
Oh,
And
tons of ways,
yeah, uh,
absolutely. Um,
yeah,
I wanted to um, I wanted to just take the time to do the shameless plug, if that's okay.
go ahead.
I just want to mention that we do have gift goals at the top. We also have subscription goals, and you can access them in the little yellow cube at the bottom left. The subscription gets you all kinds of cool emojis, and you get
Hmm.
access to our Discord where the conversations get more detailed, from the Beaver Politics shows. So you'll be joining a group of people, and it'll be much more detailed conversation. And I just want to remind people that tapping is clapping, and please share the live. We've got 16 people in the room. It's a fascinating conversation. I think it's time to open it up and bring in some people's lived experiences, perhaps, or
Okay.
maybe talk about the resources in their community that kind of maybe stand out differently from the
Yeah.
resources that we've already covered here. Because really, it's people's own voices and people's own community that will that ultimately heals these kinds of situations. If you're
Yep.
feeling unsafe and full of fear, there's probably a place in your community that can go, be supported, find to be
Hmm.
supportive for you.
Exactly.
So
And
anyway, I will.
yeah,
I'm going to mute myself. And is there
and
anybody?
we're open for guests now. If anybody wants to request up, if anyone wants to share their journey with mental health, if anyone wants to talk about any challenges or roadblocks that they've had and need some advocacy information. And while we wait for people to come up, I'll just give some basic advocacy tips. Number one, write everything down. Uh,
Mhm.
if you're having mental health challenges, keep a journal or a diary, whether you do that on your phone, just be with you in a second, healing through meditation, whether it be on your phone or a paper or a computer, whatever works for you, but just keep track of your symptoms and your feelings, because that can be really helpful when you're going to your doctor or your psychologist or psychiatrist. Oftentimes in Canada, you have to start out with your medical doctor. And a lot of people, that's a roadblock in the beginning because maybe you don't have a family doctor. There are, again, call 211. They can help you get connected to family doctors in your community if they're available. I know it can be a challenge in some communities. There's a lack of physicians, lack of psychologists, a lack of psychiatrists, but you want to, and a lack of family doctors. But the first place is to start with your family doctor, or if you're in an emergency situation, your local emergency room. Like if you're having real thoughts of suicide, you want to go to your emergency room. If you can't get there yourself, call 911 and make sure that you get the help that you need. But either way, from that point on, when you're speaking to a medical doctor, you want to ask for a request to a psychiatrist. It is not going to be fast. I'm not going to lie. It depends on your situation. It depends on the wait lists and how they prioritize you. I don't think that I think it is by priority rather than necessarily by when you request. But I know it can be a long time. And in the meantime, maybe look for some counseling that is within your means. Many people, if you're employed, you may have coverage from an employer for a certain amount for psychological fees. That's something you'd have to look into your benefits for. And you may have also something that's called an Employee Assistance Program, EAP for short. And you can get free counseling through your Employee Assistance Program. A lot of people either don't know they have one or don't realize the benefits that they have. So check with your employer, ask them if you have an EAP you may not be aware of, because not all employers are great at telling you everything off the bat. Um, and once you get in, ask for your psychiatrist. Be honest about what you're up against. Be honest with what you're feeling. Go ahead, the missus.
For those who have the privilege of an employee assistance program, I think when we talk about mental health, people forget the pieces of their benefits that will supplement. Again, it's like having the
Mm-hmm.
cast, having the cane, and having the medication all at the same time for a broken leg. There's physiotherapy that often never gets used. There's massage therapy that often doesn't get used. Acupuncture, going to a naturopath. There's all these little gems
Yep.
within people's benefit packages, and I think if people start looking at their EAP, there's sort of this, let's just say, stereotype about people dipping into that benefit. They
Yep.
don't want their employer to know they need support.
And the
They
employer most
are,
of the times cannot disclose,
they,
or the
they may,
AP.
yeah, correct. But there's that fear, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that fear is put out by the employers themselves so they can keep the expenses of their benefit plans down, right?
Yeah.
So so sometimes you have to overcome just even that basic step to get people to use their the employment program fully. I mean, I've had those conversations trying to
Yeah.
convince people to go ahead. It's okay to use those benefits. Your privacy will be protected, you
Yeah.
know,
And
and
Pastor Native mentioned chiropractic care. There's, pain management is a big one
chiropractor,
because
another one.
depression and pain, chronic pain are very closely tied. So
Oh,
things like fibromyalgia and depression, very highly tied. So take care, like make sure you're using those benefits. Do your massage therapy if it helps.
mhm.
Don't be afraid to use it. And the EAPs, as far as I know, and just ask your EAP program, they are not allowed to disclose anything to your employer other than your not like a case number and what it was about, but it's not about, it's never you. Like it's never detailed information. In fact, they
And
very
you
little.
don't have to be sick to use
No,
those, but you don't have to be phoning in sick for work to go see a chiropractor. You don't have to be phoning in sick to get a massage therapy, which actually, if you get a good one, is a very painful experience, and most people don't engage because
yeah,
it's a fun thing
it
to
hurts the
do.
next day.
Yeah, it does,
Hmm.
or even in the moment. But yeah. Anyway, it's an interesting piece of the mental health support system. I'm gonna just go on mute here so I can cough and maybe welcome healing.
Yeah,
Uh,
welcome Healing. So go ahead and unmute Healing. Thank you so much for sticking with us. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing good. Thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm doing good. So we were just checking in to see if anybody had a story they wanted to share
Oh,
about
well, if
their
you
journey through the mental health system.
if you want to hear a story, I've got some for you.
Awesome.
I was so I'll try not to make this too long, but I've got a lot of different areas to touch here. So I was born into a European family. I'm Canadian born, first generation. So my parents did not know very much about any systems of social welfare or anything like that. I have a brother, a younger brother, who was born with mental health issues. So he ended up having a lot of seizures, which caused brain damage. So
Yeah.
my parents always shunned him because, unfortunately, my mother more than my dad, because he was not normal.
Yep.
And I, at 10 years old, was looking after him, and like I was a little mom to him because I felt so sorry for him. So I
Yeah.
learned how to deal with people like my brother,
Mm-hmm.
and he entered into the Winifred Stewart School, and I went there and I met with a lot of kids that were mentally challenged, and they were the most loving, beautiful people. And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people don't understand that. Moving forward, I started working with an agency that worked with youths with addictions. Again, that was another type of mental illness. I didn't have any training in it whatsoever, but my compassion for helping people and work that I had done with my brother had led me to that path of wanting to help teenagers because
Mm-hmm.
nobody really likes teenagers and their voices are quite often not heard.
Yeah.
So I went forward and worked with them for about 15 years, at which point I ended up getting really exhausted and I needed a break.
Yeah.
Now comes in my sister. She suffered a lot of trauma. She lost a son when she was 21 years old. Her baby died before his first birthday. There was a lot of trauma through that. She got married
Mm-hmm.
and she also suffered uh, abuses, not physical, but mental abuse. So there was more trauma. And then she had two kids. And so she just kept getting one trauma on top of another. Her husband
It's
was
a
not
lot.
with her in raising the kids. If she said yes, he would say no, and vice versa. And he was working out of town a lot, which made her a single mom. And I watched her decline, and I kept trying to help her and give her advice and whatnot. And she did end up seeking mental health help, but unfortunately, it didn't help because she was not willing to do the work. So,
Mm-hmm.
once again, we can seek all the mental health help we want unless we're willing to do the work, it's really not going to help.
Yeah.
So she ended up getting to a point where she became very suicidal. Her
Yeah.
9 year old son called me, by the way, who is now in his 30s, called me and said, my mom took a lot of pills and she's not breathing properly. So I had him call 911 and then I rushed over there. So her kids now have traumas from this as well. But
Yeah.
of course, they're strong young men and they don't need help, but I can see where they should be getting some sort of help.
Yeah.
However, that's up to them. They know I'm here for them at any given time. Going
Yeah.
back to my sister, she suffered mental health. She attempted suicide on various occasions.
Yeah.
And the last time she attempted, um, I was with her. She did it right in front of me. She had had a plan. I
Oh,
had a
just want to
feeling
mention,
something,
sorry to cut in. Just make sure you use unalive, not the S word.
sorry, I'm
No, that's
sorry.
okay. Go ahead.
You're right. So anyways, she had had a plan. And I had a feeling that I needed to go over there. So when I went over, she saw me and decided that was it, that I wasn't going to stop her. She swallowed. She had 90
Don't mention the
antidepressants.
name. I was going to say, yeah, just
I'm
don't mention
not
the name.
going to. I'm not going to.
Good,
She
good.
had 90 and she had planned to take all of them. In our struggle, she ended up taking 45. She ended up in the hospital, and I was told that she had made it there just in time. In the meantime, I had to deal with her husband that she had left, her children, my mother who had dementia, and my brother who had mentally challenged. And I thought I was going to go nuts, but fortunately, I managed to keep it together. What my sister discovered, she also suffered fibromyalgia, so she was also in a lot of pain.
Chronic
And
pain.
everybody, yeah, a lot of pain, nerve pain, and she was constantly being told by the medical society that it was all in her head. So she just got to a point where for 4 years she did nothing but stayed in her bedroom and laid on her bed all the time.
Mm-hmm.
However, moving into a positive side of the story, fortunately for her that I was there because she did end up getting the help she needed. She found out that
Mm-hmm.
she had a can I say what she had?
Yeah, yeah, you can say her
Okay,
diagnosis.
she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
So
Very common
she
to
ended
have
up,
thoughts of suicide. Yeah.
right, unaliving.
Oh, see, I did it. You're right. Unaliving.
Sorry. But so anyways, once she found out the diagnosis, she came to me and said, please read up on it. Here are the 9 characteristics. I can't remember 9 or 15 characteristics, and you tell me if I fit the bill. My
Yeah,
mistake was early on, she kept saying, Faye, there's something wrong with me. I know there's something wrong with my head. I know, and I kept saying, please don't label yourself. That was my mistake. I should
yeah,
have listened and I should have gone to get help to understand it, but I didn't. No, even though I was involved in all these other areas of trauma and whatever, I did not think of finding out about this, right? And at the time, I was working with youth with traumas as well.
yeah.
So, anyways, I did read the traits. She absolutely had that. She was before her we call it her accident.
Mm-hmm.
She was engaging in risky behaviors
Mm-hmm.
and which terrified me. I did sleep well. I was always wondering when I was going to get that phone call that nobody wants to get.
Yeah.
My mother's elderly. She was suffering dementia. So I was there was a lot of different areas I had to be involved in. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, through my meditation, through my beliefs of, the spirit world and energy, I kept calling in on help. And fortunately, it came through. However, we found out about her condition. She now, today, that was 3 years ago. Today, she lives a happy life and she's advocating for mental health. She'll talk to anybody that wants to hear her story, to help them, to tell them. And she has many, many people reaching out to her saying, I can't
Yeah.
do this anymore. I can't live this anymore. And she talks to them and
Awesome.
she's there for. So she's turned around. But the important thing what is that I need to share with everybody is I'm not the only one who has a story like this. There are many, many
No.
people that have this story. It's important for us to take care of ourselves as well as take care of our loved ones. On top of which, we need to learn about the mental illnesses. My father had 2 strokes, which gave him onset Alzheimer's, which I knew one day I would go see him and he would not know who I was. So I was preparing myself for that, and it did happen.
Yeah.
And my mother now has dementia, and I we had to learn about dementia because it is scary. The that she does not remember. Sometimes she'll wake up in the middle of the night and not know where she is. And that is pretty scary. But for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, as long as we know she's eating properly and we're always looking, she lives on her own. We have cameras in her place. We have home care going to give her medications. We're trying to give her autonomy as much as we possibly can. However, we're constantly there supporting her.
Yeah.
But because I believe we are able to support her because we learned what dementia is and how to deal with it.
Yeah,
So it's very important to know what you're dealing with.
absolutely. Go ahead, the missus.
You know, and you know, your story triggers, you know, the thoughts of the advocacy conversation we're having, and more specifically the self advocacy that needs to develop as you walk through these different mental health
Mm-hmm.
journeys that you've just described, you know, because part of being a self advocate is you have to start being able to tell people about how you feel about, you know, what you're witnessing, how you communicate, how you become assertive. All of those things grow as you walk the, you know, teaching yourself self advocacy. And you may not even label it, like you said, nobody likes labels, but you
Yeah.
know, the journey of self advocacy really is about knowing your rights. It's about knowing you know, it's about knowing that you can do the problem solving for the situation, and knowing that you have to make decisions. It's all of these very, you know, they're all self growth experiences around self advocacy. It's real skill development, and you're doing that by not even being aware of a conscious effort that that's indeed what's happening to you, because what you learned from your sister you could then advocate for your father
Mm-hmm.
in a different or your mother in a different setting, right? And I've worked in end of life care with you know, at long-term care centers, and so I under when you say to me, when I hear that my, you know, my parent was diagnosed with dementia, you fill 1,000 rooms in my head, because I
Yeah.
understand what that is, right? And you've had to walk that path and learn that on your own. I'll say congratulations, because
Thank
it's
Mm-hmm.
you.
a difficult
And good for your
journey.
sister in and getting the
Yeah.
help that she needed. Like, I'm so glad she was able to.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
And oops, bring it back. That would be
I
great.
want to break that down to I knew what to do because early in life I had my brother to deal with, and then I turned to this agency to help youth with their addictions, and I learned a lot through them.
Mm-hmm.
I had friends who were psychologists who,
Yeah.
you know, would also help me through things. And so I was so glad that I had an open enough mind to learn from everybody. And I
Yeah.
really tell everybody, please listen to what people are telling you, because you never know when you're going to be able to use that information. And I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that there's someone here that said she has BPD.
Yeah.
My sister has given me the right to talk about her story. And
Permission.
also,
Yeah.
if anybody wants to speak to someone who's been there, done that, and is way 100% better now, she is more than happy to speak with you. If you do want to get in touch with her, please get in
Through
touch with
you.
me, and I'll put you in touch with her.
So
Thank
just
you for
DM healing
listening.
through meditation. Thank you for telling us your story. I appreciate it. And thank your sister as well.
I
And
will. Thank
congratulate
you.
her on doing the work. It can be really hard. And I'll introduce the
Yes.
pasty native. Hi, did you want to add in?
Hi. I was hoping to maybe share some of my personal experience with the mental
Awesome.
health system in Ontario. It sucks. Um,
Yes.
uh, most places, I know in my own experience, even when I was having unaliving ideation and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
in Ontario, it doesn't run based on need
Right.
for wait lists. It's when you apply. And even like in the small town that I grew up in, if you were in a crisis, the most that our mental health hospital would do
Mm-hmm.
is stabilize you, but wouldn't
Yeah.
work at prolonged care
Mm-hmm.
at all. And the longest they would keep anybody in was for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I've watched my aunt suffer through it. I went through it. I have had 4 unaliving attempts
Oh
myself.
my.
Uh, but that also comes with misdiagnosis and
Mm-hmm.
practitioners not being up to date on the DSM and stuff like
Yep.
that.
Yeah. And that's
Uh,
important.
I was originally diagnosed bipolar at 16, which
Mm-hmm.
found out a few years ago was a mixture of borderline personality disorder, autism, and ADHD
Not uncommon for that to happen. Yeah.
that went undiagnosed and put in for a lot more trauma
Yep.
than what was needed. Also, being someone who's part of the transgender community, suffered a
That ups your
lot
risk.
of mental health problems, specifically
Mm-hmm.
trying to make religious family members happy
Mm. Yeah.
and forcing myself to dress feminine and present as female, uh, which
When that
wasn't
wasn't how you
great.
felt. Yeah.
No, and it creates a massive amount of turmoil within your own brain.
Yeah. What's the term for that? It's
But yeah,
body dysmorphia, right?
gender dysmorphia,
Gender,
body
gender
dysmorphia
dysmorphia.
is when it tends to have more in play when there's eating disorders
Yeah.
involved, which I also have.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I developed an eating disorder at 10,
Yeah.
and sadly, especially the further north you go, there's not a lot of resources to help with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was born in Northern
And
Ontario, so I have an idea. Yeah.
yeah, northern Ontario sucks. The further south you go, there's generally a bit more. Like since moving to the capital of
Ah,
Canada, like they have mental health walk-ins,
okay.
which is absolutely insane to me because that was never a thing.
Yep.
Even like for crisis intervention, you had to book an appointment and then go.
Yep. Well, and they probably have better resources for LGBTQ2S as well.
Yeah, a lot more representation than what there was in my tiny town growing up.
Yep. Yep. Well,
And
that's the thing.
joys of Northern Ontario being stuck in a time warp, as I put it,
Yep.
for their ideology and all sorts of loveliness. But going through the mental health system, I started when I was relatively young uh,
Yeah.
because I would self harm
Yeah.
due to abuse throughout my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
My dad now and I don't have the greatest relationship, but I will commend him for the fact that I got the help that I needed thanks to him.
Good. That's something.
My
Yeah.
mom wasn't willing to help.
Okay.
She just kept telling me it was a phase.
Yeah. Uh, it's always difficult when people minimize what you're going through by calling it a phase. It's
Yeah.
not a phase. It's
Uh,
not something that's going to just pass. It's who you
and
are.
I ended up having to go through, I think it was almost 10 counselors before I found one that was good.
Yeah, and that
And
can
it
be a
was
challenge
finally
people
after.
have.
Yeah, and it was finally after I opted to look into getting a First Nations therapist
Awesome. And you were
because
able
they
to do that?
understood the generational trauma that on top of everything else.
Exactly. And the intergenerational and yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
And we do there's some research that shows that we do carry the trauma of our ancestors, that it um, changes enough in their DNA that it passes on to us. So when your grandmother, like say, had a trauma, like my grandmother uh, grew up in a little village in Finland, and there was a lot. She lost a brother, or a sister, and a mother at the same time to scarlet fever, I think, and like she had a lot of trauma in her life. And so maybe that trauma's passed on to me, right? Even though I didn't experience it, but there is some links to genetics now and trauma. So it's interesting that way.
Yeah. And a big thing that helped me within my own right for healing was
Mm-hmm.
I decided to go through a mental health and addictions program to become a service worker.
Oh, awesome.
And because I'm 4 years sober now,
Oh, congrats. That's awesome.
I was a user of both alcohol and stimulants.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Found out later, once I got my diagnoses, it was because I was self medicating,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Stimulants is very
which,
common for people that have ADD or ADHD because they help,
yeah,
right?
They do.
Yeah.
And it's weird because explaining to my addictions worker that I used in order to feel normal and to be able to
Mm-hmm.
function, they're like, huh, we need to send you for testing.
Yep. Exactly. And turns out you do have ADHD. ADHD.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, that's
But
so. How
with
are
the
you feeling
system, they're
now?
quite a lot
Just
better.
wanted.
Definitely
Good.
more stable. Since I was put on the right medication and having going through the counseling to cope with being autistic and ADHD,
Yep.
it's helped a lot with my anxiety that came from it without being diagnosed or treated, the
Yep.
depression that came with it for not being properly diagnosed or treated,
Yep. And those misdiagnoses
and
are. Oh, go ahead, Mrs.
Um,
and I found out. Oh, oh,
I have a question for you, Casey. When you were going through all of these pieces, were you aware of your, were you using self advocacy as part of your conversation? Were you actually viewing what you were doing through that lens? Or was that something you just walked without really, kind of doing a deeper dive that this is exactly what you were engaging in?
Yeah.
originally, I didn't really have a clue back when I first started seeking mental health help when I was 16.
Mhm.
Um, Once I started my course for mental health and addictions, though, it made me realize that I was self advocating and I was helping my friends who were also addicts or suffering with depression to advocate for themselves.
Yep.
And it got to a point that, like, come the end of my addiction, like before I had gotten sober, I would have lists of different organizations
Yep.
that could help that I would give to my other friends that were addicted to heavier substances than what I was on.
Mhm.
Yeah. Like some substances could be well, all substances could be hard, but some are harder than others to get off of.
Yeah. And I
Absolutely.
watched too many of my friends overdose.
Oh,
It became a big turning point in my own life in order to become sober and
yeah.
to
Well, and
get
the
away
F
from
drug is
it.
so scary out there. Yeah.
And in your youth, I want to talk about a resource that our community had. My son was heavily involved in this resource, and there's so many ways to do service delivery for youth.
Mm-hmm.
There's a movement. It's a global movement. It's called Theater of the Oppressed, and
Okay.
we had for years we had a group here where I'm from, and what the group did is it came from somebody in Brazil, last name Boal, and it was about getting kids to come in and get youth to come in and do theater work to express their oppression. Addictions was also always a big part of the conversation, but in doing theater work, just theater exercises where you blind fall into a group of people, to develop trust, or you do different, it's very physical. Like
Yeah.
theater work is very physical and it's also very improv. So this group of always about 15 to 20 youth, what they would do is they would do performances. So they would go to a school and they would do a play based on, say, meth was back in the day. Meth was the new drug that was kind of taking over the school system. So they'd go into a school and they would do a play that created the social problem, and then they would do the play, act it a second time, and the audience will go stop and they will bring themselves up into the play and they will offer a solution to whatever the problem is. It was a really fascinating group. One of the things that I did, one of the privileges I had, I was working at a women's health center and we got funding to do some research in 6 rural communities. And what we did is we took this theater group in with us to the community, did a 3-day workshop where community members came and expressed their social problems through the theater group work, created a play, presented the play to the community. Community members then would interact with the play, create the solution they thought was necessary for their community. The kind of problems were, the safety, sexual assault safety for women who had to wait for a bus at 2 o'clock in the morning in a rural remote community. Um, just for an example, right? So then, the audience members stop, come up, and they said, "Hey, we're city council here, and we're putting in a secured bus stop." And so we
Nice.
captured all their thoughts, and there was this really great youth resource that lasted. It was all volunteer based, right? So it lasted a good 10, 15 years in our community. I'm not sure where it sits now, but you've made me think of it.
Mhm.
And I hope I didn't take up too much of your space there,
Yeah.
Tracy. But
I was
I
just going to
wish my
quickly add in
community
that
would have
the
had
arts
something.
is great as a
Yeah,
resource.
I
Like
wish
the
my
arts is a great
community
one.
would have had something like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Most of
Yeah.
our youth centers in the town that I grew up in were shut down by the
Mhm.
time I hit high school because the municipal governing of the town decided that it wasn't important. They
Right.
also shut down most of our homeless shelters and stuff like that. It's lovely. I'm glad I moved away.
You
And
said
I
you mentioned
worry.
that you started taking some training in social services or some kind of certification. Did I get that
Yeah,
right?
I have
Mhm.
my mental health first aid and I have my non violent crisis intervention certification
Awesome.
as well.
Good one.
And I'm due to go back to school to finish my mental health and addictions program once I get my surgeries done for my transition.
That's
Excellent.
awesome.
Are you planning to work with youth?
It's my hope
Yeah.
Nice.
Need any
because
school
the youth
support?
tend to be neglected a lot when it comes to addictions and mental health because again it's
Hmm.
stigmatized and it's always thought that it you got nothing to be depressed about or you got nothing to have mental health
Right.
problems about when you're that age, which is something I got told a lot.
No,
Mhm.
and youth really, really connect better to people who have lived experience.
Yep.
And so that makes a big, like, it's amazing that you're doing that because that lived experience may save lives, in what you
You've,
do.
I'll offer I'm a good student and I'm a good tutor. And if you ever need help in your courses, give me a call.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my mom's also a big support for it too. She's a social worker and has been since I was about
Nice.
10. She went back to school for it and now she's an advocate for Indigenous women who are fleeing domestic violence and stuff.
So
Awesome.
that sounds like such a perfect support for you. Such a perfect.
Hmm.
I am going to hop off though because
Okay.
I need to go help put away groceries.
Thank you for sharing your story. We so appreciate it. And
Yes.
Thank you for having me
congratulations.
up. Thanks.
Okay. Take care. Okay. So we were going to talk a little bit more. I'll just change the screen here. Oh, there, it's going to do it automatically. If
Mhm.
anybody else wants to come up and share their stories, I'll talk a little bit about mine because I don't mind while we're waiting. I've always had anxiety, so that's not new. But when I had my first child, I I went into it took me until he was almost a year old for me to even, or over a year old for me to even realize it, because I was familiar with postpartum depression. I did have some postpartum depression, but it really wasn't the big thing. It was that I had postpartum anxiety disorder. And it's actually not that uncommon. They're learning more and more now that postpartum anxiety disorders are a thing, and they do happen to a lot of women because you go through huge hormonal shifts when you're pregnant, and that can it doesn't mean like obviously had a I was what is the word I'm looking for? I cannot find the right word, but I had from my family history the possibility of having depression or an anxiety disorder. As I said, the force runs strong in my family. But the anxiety disorder came on as OCD, and I just started washing. I was so scared of making my baby sick that I was obsessed about cleaning. And I started washing down everything and cleaning doorknobs with pure Javex. And he was never at risk, but I was doing damage to myself because not good for your hands. Washing the bathtub, I would soak it in Javex before I'd give him a tub, put him in, like, obviously clean it, rinse it, and then put him in the tub. He was safe. But just going overboard with how clean things had to be. And then it kind of turned into checking. I was always scared. Like if I hit a bump on the road, I was scared I ran somebody over. Like you over exaggerate everything with OCD, you over exaggerate the risks or what the worst case scenarios could be. So I would have to like I'd have times when I'd have to get out of my car and go look, even though I knew darn well there was no kid around. I still hit a bump and it still would bother me till I'd go check and make sure it was safe. I had to unplug everything in my house because I was scared that the house would light on fire when I wasn't home. Things like that, like just over it started taking me almost like 2 hours to get out of the house for work in the morning because of all these routines that I had built out for safety. And when I realized it, I'd gone to the hospital. I remember the night actually. It was when they had that historic outdoor Canadian game. Wayne Gretzky was playing or something, and I don't care about hockey. I just remember that was going on at the time. And I went to the hospital, and the nurse took one look at me. And I have a psych degree. I have a degree in psychology, and I knew something was wrong, but I didn't catch that it was OCD. And she took one look at my hands because they were falling apart. Like my fingerprints were like all cracked. I like because I was washing my hands so much, they were swollen and literally falling apart. And she took one look at my hands and said, "Oh, honey, you have OCD." And I automatically, I'm like, "Holy shit! How did I not catch that I have OCD?" But I didn't. I did not catch it. Um, I didn't catch it until she said it to me, and it seemed it was kind of like a relief, just like. And she obviously couldn't diagnose me officially, but at that moment in time, it was like a feeling of relief because I finally understood what was going on. Because I was familiar with OCD, I just didn't see it in myself. And exactly, pasty native, too close. I was too close to it, and I didn't see it. Because, like I said, I'd heard of postpartum depression, but never anxiety disorders, and certainly not OCD. I was extremely lucky, and I admit that because there happened to be a psychiatrist in that night who I got to see. Amazing doctor, worked a lot with the military, and she took me on even though she had no space. And I was extremely lucky to see someone so quickly. But I was in a very bad state, to be fair. I was not having thoughts of unaliving or anything like that, but I was just running, like going in an OCD circle. Like I couldn't get anything done. I couldn't function. I was just spiraling. And it was a mixture of taking an antidepressant. Honestly, I took an antipsychotic for a very short period of time, gained a lot of weight, and stopped that as soon as I could. But it did help, and that's the thing. Again, if you're in a really bad state, an antipsychotic can sometimes help. Um, and But that was only temporary. And I started cognitive behavioral therapy and counseling. And honestly, it was the cognitive behavioral therapy that really gave me the tools I needed to manage the anxiety that I was feeling, and the help with the medication. So that's why I will never push just medication on someone. Like I was in a definite state where I needed the medication, and I do not regret taking it. But it shouldn't necessarily be the first line of defense in depression or anxiety if it's not that high level, right? It depends on where you are. I was peaking. I was at like 100% needed help. Uh, so, um, and I to this day I still take an SSRI. I don't take any other psychiatric medications, but I take one SSRI that I've taken for years. I've gone off it twice. Both times ended disastrously. So I probably will never go off of it for that reason, because the two times I went off, then as soon as something really anxiety provoking happened, I was triggered, and I had to take time off again. So um, it was just a matter of figuring out what works for me and what I need to get better. And that's the most important thing to remember, is that it should be holistic, but it's also going to be very individual. What works for me may not work for you, right? You've got to try. And I just wanted to highlight something else that Pasty Native had said, in that they had gone through 10 counselors. Not uncommon. Don't give up. If you don't click with your counselor, let them know politely. Sorry, like give them a couple of sessions. If you're not clicking with them, let them know politely. I'm sorry. This isn't working for me. I need to, I'm not, I'm not, I'm not feeling the connection that I need to have these kinds of conversations, and find another counselor. Don't It's like a job interview sometimes. It's not like you may get lucky, and like I've been pretty lucky with counselors. Most of the counselors I've had good relationships with. But I hear stories all the time of people needing to go through 2 or 3 or 4 counselors before they get the right one. And that's normal. So don't feel it's not inappropriate. You have to have the right relationship and the right rapport, as Star said. They understand that you need to have that rapport. It's like shopping for cars or anything else. Like what is going to work for you isn't like the counselor that worked for your best friend may not work for you. It's all about matching personality styles and expectations. And it's really good, when you're going into counseling to have a good idea about what you need first. If you only are comfortable with a counselor of a certain gender, that's okay. Let them know. That can be a big deterrent for some people, especially if they've experienced sexual assault or abuse. Maybe they don't want a counselor who is the same gender that somebody who abused them, and that's okay. If you're LGBTQ2S plus and you want to speak to someone who understands that, there are many counselors that specialize and may be part of that community. So go ahead and look for that. Ask 211. A lot of the Pride centers have counselors or are connected to counselors. Um, Lori is saying that, oh, Desiree, did you want to come up or did you have something to add? Because you can come up on the panel if you want to talk a little. And yes, Lori, postpartum depression is incredibly serious. Absolutely. It can result in unaliving. It's very important that you get the help and that women are given that opportunity and checked by their doctors. And family doctors honestly often don't have is great of a understanding of postpartum depression as they should. Oh, we got Desiree. Go ahead, Desiree. What did you want to add? So glad you
The,
came up.
the thanks. The postpartum depression actually triggered my PTSD,
Yeah, I had
and
PTSD after my baby. I'll go to that later. Go on.
and I didn't like you have a traumatic childhood. You go through life. You think things are normal because
Yeah.
back then people didn't really talk about their experiences.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you saw things in other friends' houses that were the same as yours, and you just didn't talk about it. So, my son was 14 months old,
Yeah.
and I started having these really weird symptoms where I wouldn't be tired,
Right.
right? And I'd be up super late, until I felt tired, and then when I went to lay down, my brain would kick in.
Yeah.
But what would kick in is memories from my childhood that were not in the forefront, memories I didn't know I had.
Yeah.
And this went on for a couple of months, and little things would set me off, like coffee cup being in the wrong spot on the coffee table.
Mm-hmm.
The things that didn't, there weren't anything. So
Yeah.
I was able to get a psychologist appointment and was talking to her about stuff and some of the significant memories that I had
Mm-hmm.
and that had come up. And she was the one who diagnosed me with the PTSD.
Right.
But at the time, I don't know if they can now, but at the time, the psychologist could not prescribe medication. So I
Yeah.
had to. She. I went to my doctor and said, okay, so and so just diagnosed me with PTSD and
Mm-hmm.
recommends this medication, and my doctor wouldn't give it to me.
Mm.
Well, I had to go back to the psychologist and get a letter
Oh
to
wow.
give to the doctor. And she begrudgingly then gave me the medication, the prescription. Um, and so everything kind of settled,
Yeah.
right? Once I was able to get sleep and everything kind of settled down. But a bunch of years later,
Mm-hmm.
um, I started presenting with a different symptom. But we don't know if that is the PTSD or if it's something else going on
Mm-hmm.
where my brain does not shut off. I have to take medication to shut my brain off to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm not triggered by memories as per se, but for me, what helped me the most was I did a trauma healing workshop twice,
Yeah.
but it was the second time I went through it because I was with other Black women in my group. So there was a sense
Yeah.
of safety to talk about some of the stuff that I went through as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the significant things was I have never allowed people to take pictures of me.
Okay.
Aside from school pictures, that's different. but being in pictures with other people and friends and me taking selfies when I was out, forget it. It's not happening.
Yeah.
And we were having a discussion. One of the women was talking about how she was with her grandmother every weekend and they would take pictures and to mark that. And
Yep.
all of a sudden, I was thrown all the way back into this memory of my, I was getting changed, and my mother was trying to jump around the corner to take a picture of me undressed. And
Okay.
she finally got the picture,
Mm-hmm.
and they developed it. This was in the 70s. They developed the picture,
Wow.
and
That's illegal
then,
now. Yeah.
yeah, and then I remember her laughing and showing people the picture.
Wow.
And yeah, and there I was able to make the association with that trauma why I do
Mm-hmm.
not allow people to take pictures of me. You know, so
Absolutely.
the I mean, if you can find a trauma healing workshop, they are great, as well as with counseling. And I have done counseling many times in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I have gone myself. I
Yeah.
got to the point where I knew I needed to go. So,
Mm-hmm.
and the kid's dad had extended medical, so we were covered.
Yeah.
I was fortunate that way that there was coverage, and I
Yeah.
didn't really have to worry about the money, so
Right.
to speak.
And that's a huge barrier for some people, for
It
sure.
is a huge barrier. Um, but it was the second time where I made the biggest breakthroughs of my life was
You're
going through
ready.
it a second time.
Yeah.
And it's made all the difference because we people who have had trauma and
Mm-hmm.
however that manifests into their life where it's addiction, risky behaviors,
Yeah.
um, become OCD, whatever it is. um, and I totally forgot my train. I just lost my train of thought.
That's
It, it,
okay.
it
It's a big
most of the
topic.
time, yeah, most of the time it's based in trauma. And
Mm-hmm.
if I learned through the trauma workshop that if we are not able to recognize and deal with that trauma and work through it, we still live in a
In it.
world where we're looking at the world through the eyes of our trauma and not how we should see the world.
Mm-hmm. That
That
makes
was the
sense.
biggest thing for me. And the other thing that somebody said is the coping mechanisms that we learn in childhood
Mm-hmm.
were not meant to be brought into adulthood. They were only meant to get us through that situation. But
Yeah.
they
Well,
become
you're a Gen
coping.
Xer like me, so you like the
No, I'm a boomer.
no?
I'm the
You're a
tail end.
boomer.
I'm the tail end of the boomers.
Well, then the mental health system in the 70s, 60s, 70s, not the best. Like, not the best at
No,
all.
no, and I was one of those kids who ended up in a group home.
Mm,
And my mother had decided that I had a problem.
right.
So she got me in to see a psychiatrist, but the psychiatrist was so problematic. So I was talking about the racism I experienced in school, and he said to me, "Well, I understand how you feel because I was taller than everybody else in my class and I was picked on for it."
Mm, yeah.
And in that instant, I shut down because it's not
Mm,
the same thing,
no, it is
you
not.
know. So I've had
I've,
some really horrible therapists,
yeah.
and I've had some that were really good, and but for me to talk about black issues, I absolutely must have a black therapist.
Exactly. Like I was
Abs-
saying earlier, if you feel comfortable only with a certain type, that's okay.
yeah, but there's such a shortage of black therapists in Alberta, and when I was living
Yeah.
in Edmonton, I was looking. This was a bunch of years ago. I was looking, and
Mm-hmm.
there weren't any. Like a
Yeah.
couple, but not
Or,
their but their specialty wasn't what I needed.
right. You need someone who specializes in PTSD.
Yeah,
specifically, and
you know,
trauma.
yeah, and it was, and having worked in clinics, being a medical administrative assistant, I had one of the clinics has all the resources I had assembled
Right.
into a binder. you know um I never made a copy because you don't think that you're gonna come into a
Need it.
live a bunch of years later where you can share that
Yeah.
information. you
Yeah.
know but it's
No,
been it's been a journey. The last time I saw a psychiatrist, actually, we worked in the same clinic, and after my ex went back to the States, I wanted to make sure that I was on the right track.
yeah.
So I made an appointment, and we had had impromptu talks about the ex's narcissism and the frontal lobe dementia. So he
Mm-hmm.
kind of knew what was going on, but for this was appointment was for me to make sure that
Right.
I was on the right track and I was doing everything that I needed to do to be healthy.
Yeah. And it's not just taking pills, and that's what people, they can be a part of your plan, but they can't be the whole plan
Right.
because they
And
won't
or they
succeed
could
probably on
be
their own.
they could be the beginning of the plan to get you over that hump so that
Yeah.
you could carry on with the rest of the plan.
Exactly. They can bring you down a few degrees, like back to
Yeah,
closer to your normal homeostasis, but not all the way there, right?
right.
You need to do other kinds of work like counseling and courses and education and like counts groups if group therapy is your thing or
And
there are so
developing
many options.
right, and developing personal coping mechanisms.
Yep.
Recognizing for me it was going out to the mountains every second or third weekend overnight
Mm-hmm.
to distance myself from the city and everything that was stressing me out so I could decompress and
Yep.
come back, and I was back down to that baseline, where I wasn't just going off, being
Mm-hmm.
triggered by people, because people will trigger you at the drop of a hat.
Yep.
um so that was the big thing that I did for a whole bunch of years, was, and I could actually feel when I needed to get out of the city.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I'm out, and I'd be
So
checking the
nature is
weather.
very important to your plan.
It is. It keeps
Yeah.
me grounded,
Exactly.
you know.
And that works for a lot. Like a lot of people don't realize that we're so disconnected from nature sometimes that just literally hugging a tree can actually feel good, or going by
Or
water,
sitting
or
in absolute silence
mm-hmm.
without, I've always said that cities have this energy,
Mm-hmm.
and we live in the cities, and lots of times we don't notice it until we start spending more and more time out in nature.
Yeah.
And if you become in tune with that, you know when it's time to go. Even if it's just for an
Yeah.
hour, I used to go and sit and watch the buffalo at Elk Island for 2 or 3 hours if I couldn't get away.
Yeah.
You know, just something, you know, even if it seems insignificant, it's not going to be.
Yeah. Exactly. It's just getting that connection. Whatever helps you feel connected to nature. And people have to figure out, like for me, it's water. But everybody's different, right? Like for
Yeah.
you, just the buffalo or the mountains are good too.
And water
Um,
and
yeah.
waterfalls, not
Yeah. Waterfalls.
specifically waterfalls.
There's supposed to be a nice one outside of Calgary, but it's like 2 hours like south. So I don't know if I'll ever get there. But
And also Kakaka Falls, which
yeah.
is just inside the BC border. There's a whole bunch. There's Hummingbird Falls, which is west of Rocky Mountain House.
Okay.
There's Ram River Falls, which is west of Rocky Mountain House. There's the Frozen Falls, which is west of Rocky Mountain House.
Yep.
I could draw you a map, because
Yeah.
that
Awesome.
was my
Well, if you feel
thing.
like DMing me, you can send me some that are close to Edmonton. Anything in the area because I love a
They're gonna
waterfall.
be they're gonna be at least a 4 hour drive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because that, of course, you need the elevation kind of thing. But
Got to
there's,
get to the Rockies. Yeah.
you got some hiking boots.
Yep.
and it doesn't have to be an overnight thing. If it's
No.
4 hour drive, you can go early in the morning, go out to your destination, spend 2 or 3 hours, and then enjoy a leisurely drive back.
Yep. Well, there's a new thing in Japan that they're doing, and I'm trying to remember what the name is. I'm just going to Google it. Japan outdoor therapy. They call it forest bathing. There's the word forest bathing, and it's becoming a really big thing in other countries now too. And basically, you go out to the forest, you sit down under a tree, and you just vibe with it. Just it's a way of just getting in touch with nature. Like there's more specifics to how they do it, but it's really
Yeah.
interesting. And they have like forests that are meant to be quiet. Like once you go
Yeah.
in, you don't talk, and you just be at
Yeah.
peace with that. And we can do that here. Like I mean, there's enough ground land, and enough parks, provincial parks and national parks that you can get yourself out somewhere quiet and find somewhere
Yeah.
to sit and just be with nature.
Yeah, and you don't have to go that far out of Edmonton. Calgary is a
No.
little bit easier, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in Calgary, you've got it's a shorter distance to the mountains
Yep.
kind of thing than Edmonton, but it's just, and it's not even, you might think about getting out to the mountains, but let your spirit pull you into a direction. You might not get there, but you might find something equally as soothing to your spirit.
Yep. Exactly. Like you've got to find what works for you. But it's really important to look at things as a whole, like pieces of your life. You want to feed, your intellectual. We were talking about this the other week, like the wheel of self-care, or wheel of life is what it's also called. And it just breaks things into like a circular pattern where you've got like your intellectual, your career or work kind of things, social, spiritual, physical, and just making sure that we're looking at ourselves in a holistic fashion, that we're feeding those different areas, because a lot of us are just really out of balance and miss on some of those that could be helpful. And and any of them, like it's what works for you within those realms. Like even if you're
Yeah,
an atheist, you can feed your spiritual maybe through nature, right?
right.
Maybe you feel a connection to nature even though you don't believe in a god. So there are many ways to feed those different
Yeah,
aspects. So yeah,
yeah.
it's a
I
really good
was
thing.
chastised a bunch of years ago because I was going out to the mountains and I was missing church service. And I
Yeah.
said to the pastor, out in nature is where I hear God's voice the clearest.
Mm-hmm.
And he was on this like you need community, you need it. No, 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 no. My faith is personal.
Yep.
Period. I do not need to sit in a church and sing with a bunch of other people and listen to
Oh.
a sermon that it goes against my beliefs.
Mm-hmm. And maybe
And
that works for some people, but if it doesn't work for you, that's okay.
yeah, and don't let if it's going against your spirit, always listen to your spirit. Your spirit will tell you exactly what you need and when.
Trust your intuition, your inner voice.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, because you know you best,
Right.
right? So someone else telling you, "Oh no, you must do this." Generally, if someone is saying you must, it's no. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Uh, your opinion is historically incorrect. Okay, I don't know what you mean by that, Sam Hammer.
Yeah, but my opinion is based on my personal history, so it's
Mm-hmm.
not incorrect.
Yeah, and it's a matter of again finding those things that work for you as an individual, not what worked for your best friend, because that may
Right.
not be the same thing. Often it isn't. You can certainly get ideas, and that's great, but at the end of the day, only you know what's gonna feed your soul
Right.
and help you. So often, awesome, and you agree with most of them. Yeah. So, what did you find? You found nature very helpful. Did you? Well, actually, if you're doing nature, you're kind of getting exercise with it, right? Which is
Yeah.
awesome because you have to walk out somewhere to get somewhere. You're breathing the fresh air. There's so many advantages to just taking a walk in nature. Like I have a dog, and I try to take her out to the river valley for walks because that kind of feeds both of us because she's good on off leash right now. So
Yeah.
just go down there and just kind of feel connected to the fresh air and the water and the
Yeah. And there's a lot of the river valley where you can, because I've hiked most of it in Edmonton when I lived there.
yep.
And there's a lot of areas that you can get to where you're not going to see a whole lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't get out of the city, but you need to get that
Yep.
grounding, there's man, there's so much to do in Edmonton, in
Yeah.
by way of walking,
Yeah.
and
The River
and
Valley's pretty good.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you got
it's
Elk Island, which isn't too far, and you've got
no, but if somebody
what is it?
can't, for whatever reason, if they can't get out of the city, but they need that boost,
That time.
and just the main thing is stay away from the well traveled popular areas, you
Mm-hmm.
know. They're and now with them building, I don't know if they started it yet, but the bridge that goes from um they're out by the golf courses,
Mm-hmm.
northeast of the city. There's a trail there that they put in, and they're
Yeah.
connecting it with St. Albert. They were
Oh,
putting a
nice.
bridge over the river there. Then you can
Mm-hmm.
walk all the way to St. Albert. I've done the trail from the other side to St. Albert, and I've
Where
done
is this? Where is
it's
this?
so if you go, what I'll have to do is I'm going to have to pin it, and then I'm going to
Okay.
have to send you the pin.
Okay,
If you send it to me,
please
I can
do
make sure
because
Galen
I
gets it.
would, yes, as I would love to know how to get there, and because I love those kinds of walks or biking, nature walks, River Valley. Where in the River Valley is there where nobody goes? Because every time I go in there, there's lots of people.
So if you go, um, it's funny how much you forget when you move away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you know where Wayne Gretzky Drive is?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you go, okay, so if you start at Rundle,
Okay.
okay, you can go east. You can go over the river and go east, or you can go over the river and go west.
Okay.
And the old science park is up there.
Okay. Yeah.
You can park at the science park, and there's trails in there, and they're gravel, right? So it's not muddy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from there, and you can cross over the river and then go east into the dog park, and then further along, and actually get to those golf courses.
Mm-hmm.
They have
Hmm.
connected all of those trails. Right. And I think the bridge, they were supposed to be starting the bridge either this year or next year
Hmm.
over the river. And most of the time, what you'll find out that far is people on bikes, but
Right.
they're by you in a second, and
True.
um, but it's nice to, and there's like big farmers fields on the one side, and then the river is on the other side, and but what I'll do is I'll do a map and do some pictures and put them on my TikTok.
You know what
Okay,
you
okay,
have to do?
Desiree.
You have to come. You have to come here and take us out there.
If I didn't live 5.5 hours away, that would be definitely a possibility. I've just been, last summer I was exploring here because there's quite a few trails here,
Right.
Yeah.
and not a lot of people, but I haven't done the ones outside on the I see them on the other side of the South Saskatchewan. I see them, and my spirit's telling me to go over there, you
Yeah.
know, but I need a knee injection first, and I need the weather to be consistently nicer before I go over there.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Definitely.
Well, once you go there, let us know how it is. Take
Oh yeah,
pictures.
I
Awesome.
take a
Thank you
ton of
so much.
pictures too when I'm out.
Awesome. So I'm gonna wrap up because we're almost on the hour. So I'm just gonna do my spiel. Thank you so
Get,
much to both of you for sharing your stories and so much really great information. I really appreciate it.
you're welcome.
And thank you
Thanks
to
for
everyone for
having us.
coming today. Yeah, I'm
Thanks
just
for
going to go
having
over the
me.
Beaver Politics show's upcoming time. So after this show, we have Radicalized, and he is on. It's hosted by Radical, 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 8 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and he talks about the gray matter of politics and how religion is impacted by the political atmosphere. On Sunday, we have A Damn Happy Life, hosted by Happy. That's 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 to 8 Eastern. And he's looking for a deeper perspective on how people define happiness, exploring the moments of growth throughout their lives. On Mondays, we have Indigenous Matters with Treaty 6 Birder, 5 to 7 Pacific, 8 to 10 Eastern, and she talks about the effects of politics on Indigenous communities and how Indigenous people can affect the political structure. On Tuesdays, we have News Hour, hosted by Frontline. If I'm laughing, I'm so sorry. My cat is at my window screaming at me right now. Like, it's pretty hilarious. He wants in. I will get to him in a minute. So Tuesday News Hour hosted by Frontline Feminist, 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And they highlight the biggest news from the weekend or news that you might have missed and help bring it to the forefront. On Wednesday, we have the Mossy Side with Progressive Moose, 5 to 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 8 to 9:30 Eastern. He talks about the messy side of politics, doing deep dives into weekly topics. Thursday, we have the Navigation Center, hosted by the Missus, 1 to 2:30 p.m. Pacific, 4 to 5:30 Eastern, and that's education, resources, and solutions to help navigate the Canadian political landscape. In the evening, we have Truth Through Discourse, hosted by Mrs. Radical. It's 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 8 to 9:30 Eastern, and weekly discussions on relevant news topics and social issues. And finally, we have Fridays. We have Polititalk, hosted by Nerdy, 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific, 8 to 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, up to 6 hours. And this is weekly debates over politics and social issues, focusing on Canada, including the United States. And I forgot we have a new show Thursday nights at midnight, and that is with Pixie Lee, and she does kind of a talk comedy show. And I don't know a lot about it other than that, but I know that it's just kind of a lighthearted comedy show. And there we have it. So thank you for listening to me today, and thank you for joining us. It is 2 o'clock, so I will end the live. Again, thank you to everyone who's been here and everybody who's gifted and just stayed and listened. Really appreciate all of you guys, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place.
Take care.
Bye.
Have a great week, everyone.
You
Bye,
too.
everyone.
Thank you.